जय श्री राम। आप सभी को हृदयपूर्वक ढेर सारी स्वतंत्रता दिवस की शुभकामनाएं। अभी 10-12 दिन पहले हमने अपना स्वतंत्रता दिवस मनाया और आपने देखा होगा जब से मोदी जी प्रधानमंत्री बने हैं, जहाँ जाते हैं, जिस मंच पर जाते हैं, हिंदी में बोलते हैं। फिर वो देश में हो, विदेशों में हो, हर जगह उन्होंने हिंदी का परचम फहराया है। तो ऐसे में हमारा भी कर्तव्य है कि हम यथाशक्ति हिंदी में बोलने का प्रयास करें। तो आज मेरा प्रयत्न रहेगा कि थोड़ा हिंदी में और थोड़ा अंग्रेज़ी में आपसे बोलूं। और हाँ, जैसे कि मैंने कहा, हमको 1947 में 15 अगस्त के दिन स्वतंत्रता मिली। लेकिन मेरी जनरेशन और मेरी बाद वाली जनरेशन जो है, उनको कोई ख़ास प्रयास नहीं करना पड़ा इस स्वतंत्रता के लिए। आप समझ रहे हैं? हमको यह स्वतंत्रता, आप कह सकते हैं, फ्री में मिली है। मान के चलिए बहुत कड़ी धूप है और आप शॉपिंग जा रहे हैं और आप एक छायादार वृक्ष ढूंढ रहे हैं जिसके नीचे आप अपनी कार को खड़ी कर सके। अब ऐसा एक स्थान आपको मिलता भी है, पर आपने वह वृक्ष नहीं लगाया, ना आपने उसे बड़ा किया, ना आपने उसे पानी दिया, ना आपने उसे छायादार बनाया, पर आप पहुंच गए उस छाया का आनंद लेने के लिए। कुछ इसी प्रकार की स्थिति मेरी और मेरे बाद वाली जनरेशन्स की है। हमें बिना प्रयासों के फ्री में यह स्वतंत्रता मिली है। तो जब भी कोई वस्तु फ्री में मिलती है ना, हमें उसकी वैल्यू नहीं रहती है। वी टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड, and that's the reason I'll request every listener to take out a few minutes and think about the amazing sacrifices of all of our ancestors so that you and me can enjoy this day and celebrate this moment. मैं अनुरोध करूँगी हर किसी को कि आप थोड़ा वक्त निकालें और सोचें कि हमारे जो पूर्वज थे, उन्होंने कितने बलिदान दिए होंगे ताकि मैं और आप यह दिन देख सकें। राइट? सो देखिए, हम जानते हैं कि भौतिक रूप से तो हम फ्री है, ठीक है। मेरा मतलब है, आज हमारे बीच कोई अरेबिक या ब्रिटिश इन्वेडर नहीं है जो हमें खुले में लूट रहा है, राइट, या हमको प्रताड़ित कर रहा है। तो भौतिक रूप से तो हम स्वतंत्र हैं, बट क्या हम मानसिक रूप से स्वतंत्र हैं? तो मैं आपको 8 एग्जाम्पल्स दूंगी, उदाहरण दूंगी, जिसके सहायता से मैं आपको यह समझाने का प्रयास करूंगी कि आज भी हम दासत्व के कुछ चिन्ह दिखाते हैं। सो आर यू रेडी फॉर माई 8 एग्जाम्पल्स? ओके, माई फर्स्ट एग्जाम्पल वुड बी, हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू फील, it's also a question, how many of you feel that speaking in English is a sign of superiority and intelligence? How many of you feel that speaking in English with accent is a sign of sophistication? Please do not hesitate. I used to think, intelligence equals to speaking in English until I heard Shashi Tharoor. जब भी कोई हिंदी में बोलता है या मान के चलिए कन्नड़ में बोलता है, तो we look down upon them. And if by mistake they mispronounce a word in English, then तो we are very brutal. हम उसकी वाट लगा देते हैं, राइट? क्या इंग्लिश भी नहीं आती है इसको? ऐसा थोड़ी बोलते हैं, ऐसा बोलते हैं। Why would you regard a foreigner's language, that too your oppressor's language, to be better than Indian languages? जब आपको पता है, and there is enough proof to show that Indian native languages are far superior to English, ऐसा होते हुए भी why would you be of a mindset that you regard English language to be superior than your Indian native languages? Is this not a sign of mental slavery? My second example would be literature. When I was growing up, my elders, my teachers, they always encouraged me to read literature. They used to say that if you want to develop fine taste and if you want to broaden your outlook, then you must read literature. But you know what? They invariably introduced me to oppressors literature. Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Jules Verne, Victor Hugo, Oscar Wilde, Jane Austen, Percy Shelley, Wordsworth, William Shakespeare, etc. What they forgot to tell me is that the literary genius of the world is actually a native Indian, and his name is Kalidas. Kalidas has written such profound works in Sanskrit with such beauty and with such simplicity that he may well be called what young adults these days call their icons, GOAT, God of all times. And you know what? Every sentence Kalidasa wrote was a palindrome. You can read it forwards and backwards. Ab bolo. We are not even aware of it. Forget about being proud of him and his work. And what about the enormous Sanskrit literature lying around us? What about Mahabharata and Ramayana? What about Srimad Bhagavad Gita, given by Sri Krishna himself? You know what is the enchanting quality about Bhagavad Gita? Any person who opens this book at any age in life or any stage in life feels that this book is written for him or her. That's the classic quality about this book. And what about the scores of stotras set to mesmerizing rhythms? For example, Shivatandav Stotra, written by Ravan himself. Now, Ravan was a demon, but he had many admirable qualities. And one such amazing quality about him was he was an absolute bhakt of Shiv Bhagwan. This, coupled with his proficiency in Sanskrit, helped him to compose this masterpiece called Shivatandav Stotra. Shivatandav Stotra has many Sanskrit words which run into several lines. These are called compound words, and these are unique to Sanskrit literature. Forget about being aware of all this. We are not even, neither are we aware nor are we proud of the cultural richness that our civilization has. Right? Still, if you walk into a landmark or a crossword, if you see the classic sections, you will find Charles Dickens and blah blah blah. Why? Is this not a sign of mental slavery? My third point would be architectural wonder of India. What comes to your mind when someone asks you about architectural wonder of India? किसी शहंशाह ने बनवा के हंसी ताजमहल. Seriously? Shah Jahan was a Turk. The Arab world he comes from, until they discovered oil in 1990s, used to live in tents. That's all the architecture they knew. Why would you, a civilization that boasts of architectural masterpieces, attribute your architectural wonder to this desert nomad? Think about it. You have such architectural marvels lying carelessly all over India, be it Martanda Temple, Kashmir, or Somnath Temple, or Akshardham Temple, or Ajanta Ellora Kailash Temple, or Khajuraho Temple, or Jagannath Puri, or Konark, or Murudeshwar, or Hampi, or Tirupati, or Srirangam Temple, or Tiruchendur Temple, or Madurai Meenakshi Amman Temple, and not to forget scores of beautiful forts and palaces your country has. And what about the marvelous, well-planned cities that are coming out in excavation? Be it Saraswati Valley excavation, Indus Valley excavation, Rathigadi excavation. You have to give it to your ancestors that they were master builders and architects. But you forget all that and you attribute the architectural wonder of India to a desert nomad. Is that not a sign of mental stability? Besides, let's assume he built it. Still, he did not build it. He did not take a chisel and hammer and build that Taj Mahal. He used the brain, the architect, the money, the resources of India to build that structure. So whom should you give credit? To your people, but you don't. And you know what? There are accounts of several French travelers who claim to have seen Taj Mahal well before Shah Jahan claims to have started building it. So there is a doubt whether he actually built it or not. But when we talk of architectural wonder, only Taj Mahal comes to our mind. And I believe that is a sign of mental servility. Then my next point would be celebrating invaders. Nowhere in the world, any country ever celebrates its invaders. This happens only in India. And I'll tell you how. See, why do you think foreigners came to India? Because India was poor? Because India was backward? They wanted to uplift you? They wanted to alleviate you? Bullshit. They came to India because they knew India was scientifically and culturally a very advanced nation. They came to India because India contributed to 1/3 of the world trade. They came to India because India boasted of some of the world's finest educational institutions. They came to India because India's fame spread far and wide. That's the reason foreigners came to India, first as students and travelers and learners and traders, and later they quickly transformed themselves into invaders and looters. For example, let me explain this to you with an example. If I ask you to go to Ethiopia today or Rwanda today, will you go? Why not? Go and uplift them and elevate them. You won't. But if I ask you to go and settle in Europe, will you go? Why? Because Europe is advanced. So we go to places that are advanced, right? Then that's a different part of story, that much of advancement of Europe is dependent on the wealth looted from India. But you have to understand, people don't go to far off places. No country has so much resources or manpower to go to a country far away from its own and alleviate poor people there or civilize people living there. Understand that. If they are telling you this and you are buying it, that means you are fooling yourself. So, as I was saying, India boasted of some of the world's finest educational institutions. And one such institution India had was Nalanda University. This Nalanda University had a sprawling library which had thousands and thousands of manuscripts on all the subjects that you can think of under the sun. Right from architecture to Ayurveda to yoga to shipbuilding to surgery to philosophy to political science to weaponry to metallurgy. You name that subject was covered. And this was century worth of effort of our sages, which was systematically and painstakingly recorded in those manuscripts. Then one day, one invader comes, one imbecile comes by the name Bakhtiyar Khilji, and he burns this entire library down. They say the Nalanda library burned continuously for 3 months. Imagine the loss of knowledge to the humanity by a senseless act by this imbecile. But you know what's the saddest part? Saddest part is the place where Nalanda University once proudly stood. Today it is named Bakhtiyarpur. Only in India you will see Akbar Road, Shah Jahan Road, Babur Road, Lord Mountbatten Road. You will never find in Israel a Hitler Road or Hitler Avenue. And that's called self-respect. Then my fifth point would be textile. You know, Indian textile weavers were world renowned. They used to weave not fabric, magic. Indians were known for their weaving skills because they used to make these skin-friendly, breathable fabrics out of natural resources dyed with organic colors. in beautiful patterns and exquisite colors. But you know what? You must have studied about Churchill in your history books. They must have told you that Churchill is the one who fought against or strategized against Nazi and his Hitler and his Nazis. What they forgot to tell you in history books is that this fiend called Churchill cut down the hands of 21,000 weavers from India. Why? Because he wanted English weavers to have monopoly in world trade. As long as Indian weavers were there on the world scene, English weavers had no chance. So what does this diabolical fiend do? He chops off hands of 21,000 Indian weavers. Think about it. You are a weaver, you are an artisan, and somebody cuts off your hand. Imagine the plight. That's what this fiend did. But this fiend is eulogized in our history books. What they don't tell us is Indian weavers were world renowned. And that's why we behave like a population completely, thankless. We are not aware of our past. We let a foreigner come into India, set up a Fab India in India, to sell our products to us at exorbitant prices. We allow it to happen. We run after foreign brands which are overrated and overpriced. Don't you think this is not only mental slavery, this is ignorance and stupidity also? Then what did India give to the world? West would ideally like you to believe India gave zero to the world. But if I tell you India gave infinity to the world, what will you say? India's contribution to the world is immense. We have the only and the oldest spoken language of the world, Sanskrit, and this was scientifically codified by Maharshi Panini, which served as inspiration to many other civilizations to codify their languages. We have wealth of literature on all forms of art, be it dance or music. We have immense literature on Ayurveda and Yoga that studies holistic development of humans, with its belief in the eternal principle that prevention is better than cure. We have a beautiful treatise written by Chanakya called Chanakya Niti, which is an unmatched work in political science and economics. We have, as I discussed earlier, a wealth of Sanskrit literature unmatched anywhere in the world. We have in-depth study on astronomy. Every year, India publishes an astronomical document called Panchang, which is available maybe for 50 or 100 rupees, but it predicts planetary positions accurately. Earlier, the Greenwich Mean Time used to run through Kurukshetra. We are the only country in the world who teaches Bhugol, not geography, because we already knew that Bhumata or Earth is a sphere. We have Aditya Hridayam Stotram, which beautifully describes the nature of the sun. Sun in this stotra is described as self-luminous, is described as center of solar system, is described as giver of life and maker of seasons. Is it not accurate? Go to any temple in India, you will find Navagraha temple there, and you will find sun at the center. So we were always heliocentric. We have a marvelous work written by Mayasur, who happens to be the father-in-law of Ravan and father of Queen Mandodari. He has described the nature and secrets of the universe in this book called Surya Siddhant. And he describes it in detail. He talks about the tilt of the Earth's axis. He talks about the nature of the sun. He talks about presence of other galaxies in the universe. He talks about the ever expanding nature of the universe. And he also astronomically identifies the star closest to our star, the sun. Isn't that marvelous? And the father of surgery, Sushrut, Maharshi Sushrut, his statue is venerated all around the world in medical institutions, but we are completely unaware. They say that there was a injured British soldier. His nose was cut off and a barber from Pune stitched his nose back. The British, true to their nature, gleaned all information from this barber and quickly penned it down and claimed the authorship. And what about Cholas and Pandyans? They are called as the excellent shipbuilders of the world. They used to practically rule the sea. And India boasts of iron pillars which are rust proof, and you find it all over India. But sadly, this knowledge is lost to us because of mindless burning down of our libraries by imbeciles. Wealth of knowledge has been stolen from our Sanskrit texts, and we are completely unaware of it. Beautiful artistically carved idols have been stolen from our temples, and we are unaware of it. And look at the temple architecture. Do you think it could have been built with chisel and hammer? No. So it betrays what? That our ancestors were excellent architects and they had sound engineering knowledge. Have you ever seen the aerial view of these temples? How precise and symmetrical the temples are? That belies their knowledge of mathematics, applied mathematics and physics. Also, our culture has dabbled a lot in chemistry. We know exactly which material to combine with which material to get what kind of effect. But we forget all that and we believe a Westerner when he says all you gave to world is zero. When we believe him, believe me, we are still mentally slave. Then my seventh point would be Aryan invasion theory. Okay, this theory was presented by a guy called Max Muller, who was a German, who never visited India. But he knew that there is a wealth of information and knowledge hidden in Sanskrit texts. So what does he do? He studies Sanskrit and he gleans all the information from these texts. And then he goes about to distort this information so that it can serve his and his people's agenda. And he presented this fantastic theory called Aryan invasion theory. See, the idea of West was to enslave Indians. So how do you do that? You cannot enslave a superior civilization. You have to first loot them, make them helpless, war ravaged and famished. At that moment you tell them, you know what? The things you are so proud of, your Sanskrit and your culture, actually it's not yours. It came from somewhere from Central Europe. People called Aryans came from Central Europe who were Sanskrit speaking people, and the indigenous or the native population was pushed southwards. This is their theory, this stupid theory. But you know what? If you look at it, it doesn't stand the test of logic. If it were so, let's for argument's sake assume that Aryans were some Sanskrit speaking people who came from Europe. How come from east to west and north to south we have same cultural fabric, we pray to same gods, we have same rituals and practices, we dress up almost similar? How is that possible? And you know what, scientifically also this theory stands disproved. Now they have done DNA testing, and they did the DNA testing of population of different subcontinents, and the findings are amazing. They completely refute the Aryan invasion theory. When they studied the DNA of people of India, they realized that the Indian subcontinent people have pretty much intact DNA, father's side as well as mother's side. But you cannot say this same thing about 90% of the rest of the world's population. When they studied the European continent's people's DNA, they realized that the mother's DNA is intact, but the father's DNA is Indian. What does this tell you? Same finding they have found in Southeast Asian countries other than India. Mother's side DNA is intact, but the father's side DNA is distinctly Indian. What does this show to you? It doesn't show Aryan invasion theory. It shows Aryan expansion theory, that people of India migrated to foreign lands, settled there, and assimilated into those cultures, doesn't it? But we are made to believe this. This Aryan invasion theory is still taught to our children in school. As long as we allow this abominable theory to be taught in our schools, believe me, we are mentally servile. Then the last point I would want to discuss with you is, see, unless you accept the historical wrongs done to your ancestors, you are not actually free. If you are scared that you might hurt somebody's sentiment by acknowledging what actually happened, then believe me, you are not free. Many people amongst you will be there who will say, ब्रिटिशर्स ने अटैक किया तो क्या हुआ, उन्होंने हमको रेलवेज दिए, उन्होंने हमको इंग्लिश दी. फॉर योर इंफॉर्मेशन, दे डिड नॉट गिव रेलवेज टू यू. Britishers had no intention to leave India anytime soon. They wanted to loot India till eternity. They laid the railway lines to every nook and corner of India to loot India. For your information, your ancestors were not even allowed to take trains or to travel by trains. And there are historical records to show that they have stolen even Himachali wood forest. So many of the log cabins and bridges and buildings that you might be admiring in London may actually be sourced from Indian Himachali wood. उस लेवल के तो चिंदी चोर है. बट बोलते हैं कि नहीं, हमने आपको रेलवेज दी, और आप मान लेते हैं. जब आप मान लेते हैं तब आप जान लीजिए कि आप अभी भी दास है. And the second argument is they gave us English. They did not teach you English to uplift you. Your language was much more older, much more scientifically and systematically codified than English. English is a mongrel language. It's not even a proper language. They did not teach you English to civilize you. They taught you English so that you can be their clerks, so that you can do boring, monotonous, humongous and tiring paperwork for them, so that their both hands are free to loot your country. They reduced you to mere clerks. They killed all but your innovation and self-respect. Name any country in the world that is technologically advanced. France, Germany, Russia, China, South Korea, Japan. Tell me how many of them can speak good English? None of them. But has it hampered their progress? Not a bit. So there, your theory goes to ashes. That British were benevolent. No, they were not. Recognize them for the evil they did to your ancestors. They were evil. They were fiendish. They manufactured famines in India. They tortured your people. They had no intention to leave your country ever. Can you believe? But you don't want to accept all this. If you don't want to see the truth, then I believe you are mentally servile. It's not a sign of freedom, to run away from the truth. Then there are people who will tell, you know what? राम मंदिर बनाने की क्या ज़रूरत है? मंदिर बनवाने के बजाय स्कूल बनवा लेते, अस्पताल बनवा लेते. आर यू किडिंग मी? आप जानते हैं राम भगवान कौन है? Other than him being the avatar of Vishnu, Ram Bhagwan is one of the awesomest kings that ever walked the earth. He must have been in his late teens when he married Sita Mata. He must have been in his early 20s when he was sent to Vanvas. He must have been in his early 20s only when his wife was treacherously kidnapped by Ravan. What does Ram Bhagwan do? He sits and cries? No, he is a Kshatriya. He goes all the way to Lanka, and on the way he forges alliances and builds a powerful, massive army. Isn't that the sign of a Kshatriya? He goes there to Lanka. He tries to reason with Ravan. He tries to explain to him the futility of war. But Ravan doesn't understand all this. Can you imagine when rest of the world was in its stone age or some age, your kings were following rules of advanced warfare? When Ravan doesn't realize, at that moment Ram Bhagwan decides to fight a war. In a Dharma Yuddha, he defeats Ravan. And what does he do after winning against Ravan? That's the most, touching thing. He doesn't touch a paisa from Lanka. He brings his beautiful, pretty wife back to Ayodhya honorably. But is that how victors are supposed to behave? No. History books tell us something different. He had won Lanka. He should have destroyed every monument of pride in that country. He should have killed all the men. He should have taken all their women and children as his slave. He should have drained Lanka dry. But he didn't do any of this. In fact, he gave the kingdom that he has just won to the defeated man's younger brother, Vibhishan. That's Sri Ram for you. India was always scientifically and culturally advanced, but India never enslaved any other country. You know why? Because Indian kings studied Rama as their hero. And when you have hero of that stature, you don't waver from dharma. The thought of enslaving doesn't enter your mind. Yeah, you expand, you assimilate, but you never enslave anyone. But still there are fools who will tell you, क्या ज़रूरत है राम मंदिर बांधने की? Islamists, Westerners, they constantly want to drill in your mind कि no, Rama is a myth. Despite and in spite of scores and thousands of proof to the contrary, they want you to believe that your hero, your idol, your king is a myth, and you believe it. You sing that tune. You say, नहीं कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है मंदिर बांधने की. वहाँ पर अस्पताल बांध दो, स्कूल बांध दो. आप पागल है. भारत जो है, it will remain great because of Sri Ram. Sri Ram is our moral compass. He is our cultural spine. जब तक वो है, तब तक भारत की महानता कायम रहेगी. कोई भी दुनिया में आप देश देख लीजिए, वो लोग अपने हीरोज को सेलिब्रेट करते हैं। आप जाइए सिंगापुर, उनका लाइक दे विल कीप ऑन सिंगिंग प्रेजेस ऑफ दैट मैन ली क्वान यू। इफ यू गो टू फ्रांस, दे आर ऑलवेज सेलिब्रेटिंग नेपोलियन। ये बात और है कि वॉज नॉट अ undefeated emperor and all. If you go to America, they are always celebrating their founding fathers. But you are a country who doesn't want to recognize your idol because you think you will hurt some community's sentiment. Isn't this a sign of mental slavery? When you don't accept truth, then that's a sign of mental slavery. If you speaking the truth is hurting somebody, you are not wrong. That person is wrong. That person doesn't know how to handle truth, and that person or that community should go get help. It's not your fault. If you're mentally free, speak up for your heroes. Be proud of them. Because a nation is an idea, and that will survive only when you have self-respect. If you have no self-respect, then you will not fight or protect anything. Then the nation cannot stay safe. Don't fall to this, fall prey to this thing that, oh, Britishers were benevolent. Oh, Rama was a myth. No. If you believe in all this bullshit, I'm telling you, you are mentally enslaved. And you are heading for one more round of a long-standing slavery. So that's all for today. I wanted to discuss these 8 points that, we are, physically we are free, but mentally we are not. And there are n number of points actually, but I remembered only these. And in the limited time I could cover only these. Now some of you might be tempted to ask, तो इसका मतलब है आप कभी इंग्लिश नहीं बोलेंगी या आप कभी वेस्टर्न क्लोथ्स नहीं पहनेंगी? तो नहीं, मैं इंग्लिश में बोलूँगी और मैं वेस्टर्न क्लोथ्स भी पहनूँगी, क्योंकि आई वॉन्ट टू बी रेलिवेंट, आई वॉन्ट टू डू सोशली एक्सेप्टेबल थिंग्स, बट nothing I do anymore is a blind copy. I don't ape anybody. I'm fully conscious of the fact that I come from a glorious civilization and I'm immensely proud of it. I know India shined once and I'm so sure that her time will come again. Now some of you might be tempted to ask that, do I want you to disrespect other cultures? No, absolutely not. That would be an un-Bharatiya thing to do. See, भारतीयता का एसेंस ही ये है कि हम रिस्पेक्टफुल हैं, हम टॉलरेंट नहीं हैं. We actually accept a person or a culture as he or she is or as it is. We don't alter it. We don't try to modify it according to our beliefs. We accept it as it is. So if you really have a genuine appreciation for some other culture or people, please try to imbue those qualities in yourself. Be magnanimous. That's the point, number one quality of an Indian. But don't be a blind follower. Remember the rich culture you come from. Try to mentally, unslave yourself. I don't know whether such a word exists. प्रयत्न करें कि आप इस दासत्व से बाहर आए. The moment, the minute you realize any or all of these points, that moment you wish yourself happy Independence Day. तब तक के लिए सभी को स्वतंत्रता दिवस की ढेर सारी हृदयपूर्वक शुभकामनाएं. जय श्री राम, वंदे मातरम.